Hey everyone, so I am here with Kenneth Mejia. He is a Green Party congressional candidate running to represent California's 34th district. And this is in Los Angeles, correct, Kenneth?
Correct.
So your campaign has been really exciting. I've kind of watched your rise in politics. I know you were running for office before, and now you actually made it into the runoff. So you'll be going up against the corporate Democrat in November. Tell us why running as a Green Party candidate was so important to you and why you decided to challenge your opponent, who is Jimmy Gomez.
Yeah, so I first started 3 years ago in 2016 when we ran for the first time as a Democrat, as a write-in during the Bernie Sanders surge. And after we saw what happened to him, how they basically colluded, the DNC colluded against him and allowing Hillary to win. And then just seeing things as the Democratic Party wouldn't put on their platform, like single-payer healthcare or banning fracking, I said, you know what? I'm out. I've been a Democrat,
Yeah.
so I didn't. I also joined the Green Party because they actually have a platform that many people agree with. You know, single-payer, tuition-free college, canceling student debt. Things like rent control. And those were things that I strongly believed in too. So it's either I was going to go nonpartisan or join a party that already had ballot access. So that's why it was important to me. We also don't accept corporate money at all. And that's something we're very, very proud about. And, our Congressman, Jimmy Gomez, he receives lots of money from corporate PACs. And so we want to provide people those options and also introduce radical legislation like canceling student debt, abolishing ICE, full legal status for all, universal rent control. So, that's sort of why we're running again and why we're running green.
And if you're elected, you'd be the only member of Congress from the Green Party, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we never had anyone. Yeah. But we also have two Greens who made it to the general in California as well. So Rodolfo is running and Laura Wells. So they're also Green. So hopefully we could get some more people in there as well.
It would be absolutely amazing. And I think if any time is going to be time for the Green Party, it's going to be now. We're seeing the rise of progressives. We have DSA-backed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York's 14th district. We have Kenneth Mejia potentially making it into Congress. I think that for progressives of all stripes, this is really, really exciting. So I wanted to ask you about your opponent with regard to some policy issues, because I don't know where he stands on Medicare for all. I don't know where he stands on foreign policy. Can you kind of differentiate yourself from him and why specifically individuals in that district should go with you, who's clearly the more progressive choice?
Right. So if you look at Jimmy Gomez on paper, for the most part, he votes the right way. He's a co-sponsor of HR 676. He finally joined on other progressive bills like the Free College for All Act. But if you look at LA, we're a huge Democratic stronghold. And when you look at the bills he co-sponsors like Medicare for All, he receives so much money from health insurance companies and big pharma. It's like, why? Well, why do you even do that? And he receives money from the largest student debt collector. And, these are just things that he does that although he votes right or he co-sponsors something progressive, he still takes money from the people who even, fund the people on the right. And that's sort of why he's not pushing hard for this legislation like Medicare for all or college for all. And, in terms of actual voting, he voted to fund and authorize ICE last year. He also voted in terms of foreign policy to put sanctions on Syria, North Korea, basically all those countries who the media likes to bring up and sort of depict them as our enemies so we could stay distracted as well. And so, those are some of the big differences where we don't receive any corporate money like he does. So we could actually push these for these bills that are progressive even further because he'll co-sponsor, but he'll keep his mouth shut. Number two, we could vote the right way too, but we could also introduce legislation that could really help people like canceling student debt or full legal status for all or abolishing ICE. And he's just your bare minimum Democrat. And if you want your bare minimum Democrat, then we're really not going to go anywhere. So that's sort of where we differ.
Right. And, I'll just say this. It's super easy for a Democratic incumbent who has a very progressive challenger to co-sponsor bills when they don't have power currently. But what's really important, I think, is when it comes up to a vote, when Democrats actually do retake back Congress, will they be there to fight? And I feel like you can't trust these individuals if they're taking that corporate PAC money. So I wanted to ask you, because your campaign is particularly exciting, because I think that if a Green Party member or a couple of them got elected to Congress, that would absolutely terrify individuals like Nancy Pelosi. So I got to ask what the response you think would be if you got to Congress. Do you think they try to marginalize you? Would it be difficult to get committee appointments? How do you think the aggregate establishment would respond to you? Or do you think you'd be able to find basically like-minded colleagues in people like Pramila Jayapal or Ocasio-Cortez? How do you think the establishment would react to your victory?
I mean, we already see it, how they did it to Bernie, how they did
Yeah.
it to Alexandria. What makes it even worse is we're a third party. They're going to basically shun us. They're going to say we're the reason for Trump. Particularly for me, they're going to say, oh, he's too young. They're not going to be accepting to it. As long as what we tell people is, there may be good people in the Democratic Party, but the corruption is systemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're sort of put in that position under that party, you're sort of pressured to vote a certain way or whatnot. Because if you don't, they're going to really challenge you as much as you can. Like how Nancy Pelosi said, oh, Alexandria's win doesn't represent all Democrats. And it's just like they're trying to brush off these significant victories. But definitely if we won, what we tell people is even if we're green, we'd caucus with anybody who cares about the people. So let's say if Democrats wanted to put a bill for forgiving student loans, we'd go for it. If Republicans wanted to do a bill that abolishes ICE, we'll go for it. So, we'll caucus with anyone who gives a damn. And that's sort of what Greens are about. We're not against left versus right, but what's right versus wrong. And, and we'll have some allies there, Tulsi Gabbard, Alexandria, and whatnot, Bernie. So
Right. Yeah, and one thing that really I think to me is super exciting about the Green Party is that, well, and really credit to Jill Stein, she kind of set the bar when it comes to talking about student loan debt. She
right.
started this conversation about canceling student loan debt, and now some Democrats are talking about it. You've adopted canceling student loan debt. So can you talk about some of the ideas that really set you apart from progressive Democrats? Because I know you support the cancellation of student loan debt. Do you support a policy that I think people would freak out if we even talked about this, like universal basic income? What is your stance on that?
Yeah, we actually have it on our platform.
That's awesome.
We want to give a $12,000 a year. So we're open to it. If you think about it, people are suffering, and there have been studies that in Finland and India where they do implement it, where they saw that people are actually using the money for food, rent, things that should be basic human necessities. So definitely we would include basic income, but we'd also want to make sure we still keep fighting for things like Medicare for all, education for all, because we want people to use that money to see if that could help them as well in terms of starting a business or having some time to relax. And so, because I think a lot of people are afraid that if you put basic income, you'll take away everything else. And so
Right.
we would definitely push radical legislation like basic income.
That's great. And that's a really important distinction, because I think that there is that kind of depiction of universal basic income that if you push for that, then the other policies like Medicare for all and free college wouldn't be necessary, but those would still be necessary. It's just, basically making our economy work for working people. Now, one thing that I wanted to ask, because the thought of having a Green Party member in Congress is very exciting to me. But my goal ultimately is to get a lot of Green Party members elected. And one way that we can do that is with electoral reform. Now, that's actually part of your platform. So
Right.
I wanted to ask you about a bill that I think is really exciting. This was authored by Ro Khanna. This is HR 3057. And what this You've heard of it. Perfect. Okay, so for viewers who don't know, what HR 3057 would do is it would end gerrymandering. That's the first thing. we'd move to nationwide ranked choice voting. And most importantly, in my opinion, is we would go from single member districts to multi-member districts. Can you talk about why this is so important and why this could open a door to not just a third party, but fourth and fifth parties potentially?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you said the main two things are ranked choice voting and proportional representation, which is the multi seats that you'll see in elections. Number one, ranked choice voting allows people to vote their conscience. If you are afraid that your vote will somehow miraculously allow someone to be elected in office, like you saw it during the last election, like Donald Trump, you could essentially rank your vote. Let's say you wanted to vote for Jill Stein, then you vote second for Hillary, and then third for Gary Johnson, and fourth for Trump. If your first vote, Jill Stein, in the first round of voting, if she ends up getting the least amount of votes, or if no one ends up getting 50%, your vote gets removed and goes to your second vote, Hillary. So essentially, you're not getting scared or pressured into voting for someone you don't want to. And then, so that's ranked choice voting. The second thing is proportional representation, is that if we have multi-seat districts, if I were to get like 20% of the vote, and let's say there are 10 seats up for grabs, and let's say the Green Party line, we end up getting 20%, that's like 2 seats. And essentially what that allows is more parties to be involved, and it allows coalitions to be built. So let's say if like right now you only get center Democrats and conservative Republicans, and if you were to have a proportional representation government, you would have very even small minor parties like us who have 1 seat or 2 seats, and be like, but we could be the balance of power and be like, hey, well, we think you should push harder on universal health care or abolishing ICE. And so that's sort of why it's important, because it allows more democracy, and it allows parties like us to have a seat at the table, because right now we're not represented. And so
exactly. And it changes it from a zero-sum game to a completely different system. So for example, in each district, we all only get to pick one person. Right. Who we want to represent us. And usually it's just a Republican or a Democrat who ends up winning, because a lot of people are afraid that the party that they don't like the most will win if they go third party. And there's a lot of third parties in the country. It's just a matter of getting them elected. But when you have this multi-member district, and now sometimes 3-4 people get elected, then it makes it more likely that other parties can become politically viable. So that's why it's so important. And I kind of talk about electoral reform as being, I don't know if I'd say equally important as campaign finance reform, but it's certainly up there, because it's part of the reason why we're not getting represented. Now, can you talk about campaign finance reform? Because I think this is also something that is just huge. What do you think is the solution to basically ending this legalized bribery system that we currently see?
It's so hard. Like we're living it. Our campaign in the past year and a half, our congressman has raised over $1.5 million. And us, we've raised close to probably 100,000, but we're all small dollar donations. Mm-hmm. Think about it. They have a freaking all this money that they could just send mail every day. We're all people power. And so it's so hard to compete when PACs, super PACs, corporate PACs are basically funding these campaigns at max donations of $2,700, when for us, it takes us like a month to raise $2,700. So, that's why we believe we should get all money out of politics. And if anything, it would be public campaign financing, where each candidate who runs gets a certain amount, and you actually have to work your ass off to earn people's votes. Like we knocked on 10,000 doors last election, and we received around 9,000 votes. Just think about like if we had more resources to do what our opponent did, and it would have put us on a very fair level playing field. So
right, it's just the playing field currently is not leveled. And for people like you who don't take corporate PAC money or any corporate money, it makes it so difficult, because you want to remain principled and you want to communicate to people that you're not going to get in there and be a corporate stooge. But to do that, you do have to disadvantage yourself and raise and struggle to raise, like you stated, Jimmy Gomez has 1.4 million. You have 100,000, which is actually really impressive, by the way. 100,000 that shows that you have a lot of momentum. Now, this is one thing that I wanted to ask you, and it kind of will lead into another question. So we're kind of seeing this ongoing conversation in America about democratic socialism and social democracy. So where do you think you and the Green Party falls? Are you more of a social democrat to where you believe that we should kind of have a mixed economy between socialism and capitalism? Or are you a democratic socialist where you kind of think we need to move beyond capitalism? And actually opt for a democratic socialist system? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, on the Green Party, our Green Party platform is we are eco-socialists. And essentially, we believe that many of the means and productions, especially for things like healthcare, education, housing, protecting our environment, the infrastructure, many of these things that contribute to your very basic existence should be controlled not by any private companies or be privatized at all or be treated as a commodity. So we believe that those, especially many of the essential living things that we need, needs to be operated and owned by the public sector like us. And if you think about it, it makes sense because right now is privatized, from healthcare to housing, and I hate the fact that we subsidize so many freaking rich companies, like health companies,
awful.
real estate developers to build affordable housing. It's like, why are we giving them like more money to build? Why don't we do it? Like, why don't we own the means and productions of providing quality services to people instead of letting the free market compete with one another, where, in LA, one big example is housing, where the private market is competing against one another, and they just keep building and building and building these luxury apartments that cost $2,000 a month for a studio or one bedroom, and no one could afford it. And they're like, oh, no, we just need to keep building because eventually no one's going to go in there, and then we're going to lower the price. And it's like, what do you mean? It's like,
it's ridiculous.
So that's sort of what our campaign believes, especially these basic human necessities should be human rights and should be operated by us, the people. So,
and I love that answer so much. And the reason why I'm asking you that, because I'm someone who has kind of come out saying, don't focus on the isms, focus on the policies. And that's what you did. But the reason why I'm asking you this is because in the event you were to win, I think that so much of the media attention you'd receive, it'd be huge. Would be focusing on how radical you are. We kind of saw this with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We have people calling her a communist on Fox News. And this was something that was really fascinating to me back in 2016 when I was watching Jill Stein, when she'd go on Fox News. One of my more popular videos was me talking about how basically she went on Fox News and made their heads explode because she was saying things that to them was so alien that they didn't know how to respond. And it was really basic. So I remember when it comes to, they asked her specifically about canceling student loan debt. How do you pay for that? The question that all of us on the progressive left hate so much because it's so hacky. But she was asked how you pay for canceling student loan debt, and she said the same way you pay for the wars. And the look on that Fox News host's face was just she was befuddled. She couldn't comprehend. Wait, what? What I'm curious to know is how you would respond to the mainstream attacks on you, because I don't feel as though as a Green Party candidate you just get attacks from the right. I mean, Alexandria, Ocasio-Cortez is getting attacks from other Democrats. So as a Green Party member, I feel like the establishment would just try to beat you down, so how would you respond to claims that you're radical? How would you respond to claims saying that everything you want is pie in the sky and it's never going to happen if you were elected?
Right. Well, one of the good things about me personally, my background is I'm a CPA. So I look at finances, I see how much things cost and how much we make. And I could sort of say like, yo, listen.
You can put them in check.
Exactly. The F-35 program alone costs a couple $1 trillion. And you don't see yourself saying, how are we going to pay for that? So I think number one would just be showing facts about how much things cost already that we're spending on, and sort of saying, well, we could allocate these funds to let's say canceling student debt. You know what I'm saying? Or we could also show them, hey, well, look how much money you'll actually save when you don't have to pay your health insurance premiums every paycheck, where you don't have to pay your copay, and where you don't have to reach this high ass deductible. And then they'll be like, you know what? Like that makes sense. And I think what a lot of people is, once they sort of sit down and they see these numbers and they're like, this is not really pie in the sky. This actually makes a lot of sense. I think many people, when it comes to politics, are driven by emotions. But when you actually break it down to them, and that's sort of what we'll do when we're in office, we'll literally bust out these pie charts and Excel sheets, because when I count it.
That's awesome. See, and I like that, because if anyone can combat that bullshit, it's going to be someone like you who's a CPA.
Exactly. So we'll show them. It's like, hey, look at, we spend this much. Look how much we spent here. We spent $6 trillion on the last 12 years of war, even more. Look how much we save here. Look how much we gave in tax cuts to the rich since Trump enacted the tax bill. We gave $2 trillion. Look how much we could save over here if we were to put that $2 trillion into education. And it's just, these things like these make total sense once people break it down and read through it. If it doesn't click at that point, then it's more like personal differences.
Yeah, exactly. And really, I think what you're saying is really important. It just comes down to having conversations with people. And pretty much what you're telling me is that if you win, when you inevitably are invited onto Fox News, when they try to bash you, it's going to be very interesting to see their head spin. In the same way that Jill Stein did to them. So tell us what we can do to support you, because this is a David versus Goliath situation. I mean, you're being outspent by a gigantic margin, and you need all the help you can get. So what can we do if we want to support you and help you beat Jimmy Gomez?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a tough battle to go. We got close to 10,000 votes in the primary. He got 50,000. Our goal is to essentially use grassroots power, where specifically our strategy is to recruit 10,000 nationwide volunteers. So any one of you watching here would help us secure 10 votes. And the way you could do that is easy, phone banking. Or two, if you know anyone who lives in LA personally, you could call them and be like, hey, can you vote for my friend Kenneth Mejia? And then you would just send me an email of their first and last name. Or three, if you live in LA, canvass. And we don't have the money. If we try to compete with money, we're going to lose. So we're just trying to compete with grassroots power. So the third one is, if you live in LA, help us canvass, help us talk to voters. And you all can sign up to phone bank, volunteer, donate at mejiaforcongress.com, MEJIA, the number 4, congress.com. And this will literally take you like maybe 2-3 days to secure just 10 votes, because we have close to 4 months left. And if you think about it, 10 votes to secure over 10 months is doable. It's just a matter now of getting more and more people involved. So.
Right. It's a people powered movement. And
yeah,
I think that
10,000.
Exactly. You've done the math. You know what you need to win. Have you gotten much, before we go, I just want to ask you about the coverage, because I think part of it as well, for individuals who can't go to California and knock on doors, sharing information about Kenneth Mejia is very, very important, because part of it is a lot of individuals, I think, would be inclined to support these progressive grassroots candidates, but they just don't know about them. So have you gotten much coverage locally?
The thing about here, like the local media or whatnot, they don't see this as a high profile race. And also we're running as a third party as well. So it's very tough to get any coverage from anybody, since a lot of the Democrats have a majority here. They're tied to like the LA Times and all the other large news sources. So it's been tough. But that's something we're trying to do, is get more attention from nationwide, from anybody. If anyone knows celebrities, tweet them or whatnot. So it's been difficult, but we're trying to get more and more attention, because he doesn't even want to debate us. So
of course.
we put him on. We said, hey, Jimmy, even online, like, can you debate us? And he was deleting people's comments. And so,
wow.
Just that's the thing. He doesn't want to put any attention on us. So.
Right. It gives, because debating you would give you intention and empower you in a way. And also it'd be incredibly embarrassing, because we know that you would absolutely clean the floor with him. How old are you, Kenneth?
27.
Yeah, he doesn't want to get beat by a 27-year-old. That's not a good look for him. So it makes sense why he's running scared. But the fact is that you do have him running scared, because even though you're being outraised by such a gigantic margin, again, $100,000 of just small donations, that's nothing to dismiss. So he's got to be paying attention. And what's important is that this is definitely a winnable race. It just, like you said, you've got to get the people to put in as much work as possible and put in the effort to get you to Congress. So look, I'm going to be watching very closely. I'll be rooting for you. If you got elected, it would be absolutely huge. It would be a national story. I think perhaps bigger than the Ocasio-Cortez story in many ways. Because we've never had a Green Party elected to Congress. And if you want to see the difference between the Democratic Party and the Green Party and why Green Party is so much better on everything, I think having a Green Party person in Congress would make a difference. So, and also the great thing that I like about you is that you're trying to get in there and make it so that way other Green Party and just third parties in general can get elected. That's so important. Just breaking up that duopoly is so fundamentally important right now in getting money out of politics. So look, I'm rooting for you. I absolutely hope you can crush it. Look, the fact that you raised that much money is a really good sign. So I hope that Jimmy Gomez is scared and knows that you're coming for him.
Yeah, so I want to thank you, Mike, and I want to thank all our team. We're all 100% volunteers. We're students, high school, college, workers. I'm like a full-time volunteer too, 8 to 6 every day. But we have hundreds of people out here on their own time, spare time, committing their time to basically talk to voters. And so I want to say thank you to everyone nationwide, everyone here locally, and for these local progressive media outlets like the Humanist Report, because, hey, it's y'all who are putting us up and giving us this attention that we really need. So thank you.
Yeah, we're trying, man. Well, good luck. Hopefully we'll have you back on the show again. Hopefully the next time you're on, you will be a member of Congress. We're rooting for you. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.